Okay, in this session we're going to be taking you through the attachment options, harness options for using a VRS for victim rescue. Now, what type of attachment method or harness that I use is going to be based on three elements. First is whether that victim is conscious or unconscious. Second is going to be the conditions that I'm encountering. And third is going to be the time that I have available. Now, as you can imagine, in certain situations, conditions and time go hand in hand. And if time isn't on my side, I might not even be able to use a harness to attach to the victim. Now when I don't have time, so what we're dealing with right now, Connor would be the conscious victim. We're going to say civilian because he's obviously in his uniform and street attire. But this technique could also be used on a conscious firefighter that doesn't have a belt over their coat, a escape belt over their coat, or one integrated in their pants or a seat harness. And I don't have time, so I want to rig into this victim very quickly and get them out of the environment before they go unconscious on me. So I don't have time to apply a harness to them. I have two options, and they're going to be based on whether I go primary deployment or secondary deployment, the burn technique. If I'm going primary deployment, remember I'm working off the lead end of my system. I'm using primary deployment when I don't anticipate having to get out after the victim, or if I do, I am in an anchor-friendly environment. I have a lot of options for anchoring. So in primary deployment, I'm always going to be facing the victim. You envision the window would be behind me. Come out, pull out the lead end of my system, and this is going to sound a little funny, but I'd ask the victim, what's your waist size? The reason I want to get a gauge on what their waist is if I pulled out way too much rope, then I'm going to have to cinch the system back up. And if you remember, it's a lot more effort to take rope up than it is to pull rope out, okay? So I asked Connor, what's his waist?
33.
Okay, I pull out what I think is the distance that I need. And then on primary deployment, remember, I need a carabiner to work in conjunction with the hook. So I keep that black diamond right on my coat, but again, if you didn't, you could take it off your 9-foot webbing loop. In extreme situations, you could take it off the terminal end of your VRS, but I don't recommend that because it's harder to remove. So I take this black diamond, and this is how I like to connect in, Dan, if you can get a visual of this. I'm coming in, hook's facing this way, I clip in, and that's my orientation. And the reason I do that is it's going to put the beaner closer to the victim's body when I get done wrapping. I didn't mention, this is my old gear. And my old gear, I didn't have a pre-attached system. Now in my new gear I do. It's a little bit easier to draw rope out when you don't have a pre-attached system. So I just let go of the DCD. If you're integrated, it's just going to be hanging from your belt or harness at that point. I'm going to start, the system comes out on my right, I'm going to start on Connor's left. I'm going to come around his back. And if this was a firefighter, I'd be going underneath the firefighter's SVA backplate. So I'm keeping it right around waist level. And then, can you see this, Danny? I'm kind of turning a little bit toward the camera. I'm going to clip into the carabiner. I'm going to lock it off. And now, you don't necessarily have to capture the hook, okay? But we like to, and that's one of the things I recommend, because this hook is just hanging free now, and depending on how Connor would roll out the window, there's a potential for the tip of the hook to capture the sill, and that would actually inhibit him from getting out of the window and out of the environment. So what I recommend is that you actually capture the hook so it's in this upright orientation. Now, you want to be offset from center. So this is Connor's belly button. I'm a little offset on that because once I cinch this up, see how everything gets drawn to that center point? That's what's going to happen. Now, whether I do primary deployment, we're going to show you secondary deployment or burn technique, how to attach in. I'm going to let you know that this is extremely uncomfortable. In fact, really, it borders on extremely painful. It's not something that we encourage or recommend doing in training because, yes, there's a potential for somebody to get injured using this technique. In the real world, it really comes down to life over limb at that point, okay? I'm going to actually be hanging from both these methods so you can kind of get a visual for it and you get a perspective just based on my voice on what it's like. But it works, okay? It's not unsafe to do, but because of the discomfort, we try to avoid it in training. But I want to just show you what it looks like nonetheless. So that's primary attachment, and then if I'm independent, I got to hook up. That's how we connect in with primary deployment, hook and beaner technique, capturing around the victim's waist. Some people say, well, listen, Dale, if this is so uncomfortable around the waist, couldn't we just bring this up around Connor's chest so he's got more support of his rib cage and get it underneath his armpits? Well, if you look at the differential when I go around Connor's chest, it's going from my belt or harness up to his chest. So this is, the differential here is Connor rolls out the window. There's a chance that if he doesn't roll out gracefully and he falls, it creates what we call a factor 2 fall, which means he's above the anchor point, he drops to below the anchor point before he loads the system. That puts a ton of shock on Connor and as well as myself as a rescuer, and that can create injury on both ends, okay? The system will withstand it, but our soft bodies won't. So that's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of going around the chest. I like to keep around the waist. The other question that comes up is, why can't I just, if I don't have a beaner, can I just create an open hitch like I do for securing a tool in the wall? And how that would look like is, you want to make sure you pull out enough rope. And you can do this. This isn't something that isn't acceptable, but you got to kind of get a visual on how much time this is. Give me your arm. This is great because this is exactly what would happen. Give me your other arm. Okay? I want to get that in there. And now you see how this is cinching up? You can do that. It's still going to bite. Okay? But you got to look at, oh, I actually rigged this hook wrong, so now that the way I rigged it, it's actually down, I got to watch and manage it so it doesn't capture the sill. It's still going to cinch up around them, but it's not as fast or efficient, in my opinion. It's just capturing that hitching slot with a beaner and wrapping it around the body. They could also step into this instead of going over their head, but then you got to bring everything up. Okay? Now, my next option is, why couldn't I look at Connor as a substantial object? So in other words, I'm going to come around his waist, create a bite or rope through the hitching slot and come in, and then I'm fastened around his waist. You see the slack in here? It's tough for me to get this super tight around Connor. See how it keeps slacking out? The reason I'm not a fan of this is you got to take into account, especially a civilian, but if they're taking in a lot of smoke and they roll out the window and they go unconscious, you look at how, we know everyone that's had a P&B, pulseless non-breather, somebody that's unconscious, they know how flaccid the body is and relaxed it is. There's a potential, remember not everyone has that V shape, some people have that pear shape where they're bigger around the waist and more narrow up in the shoulders. This system could slide right off their body if they would go unconscious midway in the descent. So I want the ability, even though it's painful, I want the system to be able to cinch up and crank around their waist. So if they would fall unconscious, it's really going to squeeze everything, just almost fold them up, and we still have them positively secured, okay? Okay, now we're going to show you primary deployment. Don't worry about all the mechanics here. We're going to show you that in another video. Just want you to focus on what this looks like and what it's like for the victim once they get loaded from the system. Again, it's very, very uncomfortable. Sometimes we don't advocate doing it in training, but I want you to get an appreciation for what it looks like. You don't necessarily have to capture the hook, as I mentioned in the description of this, but you got to be careful as that victim goes to roll out. If that hook would capture a projected sill plate, it's problematic there. You're not going to get them out. So one of the things we like to do is actually rotate the hook up, just like this, and then we capture it. Now we keep it in the upright position. There's a lot less of a chance of it capturing a projected sill plate, okay? All right, ready? Victim's gonna roll out in the head first. They're staying below the thermal. Have them reach up, hold that right there. So they're gonna reach up for that rope to take pressure off their body. Go ahead, lower me down. You can see, I don't know if Danny can get a shot of this. You there? Mm-hmm. See how this gets loaded? Some people question, wow, is this going to disembowel the victim? It doesn't. Okay, it never really actually punctures perpendicular into the torso or the abdomen. It's actually parallel to the stomach. So some people don't like to capture that hook. If you don't, you keep it completely away from it, away from the body. That's fine. You just got to make sure that you manage it as you're going over that sill plate so it doesn't capture any part of the window frame. My next option for attaching into Connor as a conscious victim, again, whether it's a civilian or a firefighter, is what we call secondary deployment, or the burn technique. Now remember, as I mentioned in the intro, I'm not using the burn technique unless I foresee having to exit out after the victim and I am in an anchor unfriendly environment, which means that the only option that I have for anchoring my system is using the hook, okay? So in that situation, again, in the older gear, I'm going to draw up my hook to the top of the F4, okay, and I'm using the flash as my descender, so I keep it available for me. Now I'm working off the back end or the terminal end of my system. Same thing. Everything's consistent here, guys, as far as I'm connecting the victim. I want them to face me always, and then the system's coming off on my right, on the victim's left. So I come around. Again, if Connor was a firefighter without a belt or harness, I would actually come underneath their SCBA backplate. Stop short, so Connor, I'm going to have you this way. Always stop short of midline, because watch as you draw the carabiner in. So you're almost going to stop right here on the lateral side. You can see when I cinch this up, it's going to come to his midline. I lock that carabiner off, then I come back to the flash, and I stay close to the victim. We're going to get into these techniques much more specifically when we actually go through the whole rescue itself. So don't worry about getting specific on this or remembering this portion. I just want to show you what it looks like. I stay close to the victim, and now this becomes my DCD. It's my way of lowering the victim out, get them down to the ground. I release it, and then I have the hook available for me to descend. Okay? So this is the beaner wrap versus the hook and beaner wrap. Okay, we're going to do a quick demo showing what the system looks like for a secondary deployment now, or what's referred to as a burn technique. So just the carabiner now is cinching around my waist, is away from my body. That's acting as a DCD. Don't worry about the procedures, just like in primary method. Don't worry about this. We're going to cover that in the upcoming videos. I just want to show you what this looks like when it's loaded and some of the things that you need to tell the victim. So hands in position, the victim's going to be rolling out. More than likely, the victim's going to drop all the way down into a vertical position. So hold it, Scott, right there. So as they drop down, have them reach up for the rope. That takes some of the pressure off their body. All right, Scott, lower me down.